To start. Okay, it's live.
This stream is live, yeah. I
Okay.
would just start, yeah.
Well, I'll introduce myself. My name is Olivia, and I'm an intern with Environmental Health Trust. Thank you so much for joining us today for this Facebook Live conversation. And I'm really excited today because I'm joined by Dr. Rob. He's a practicing radiologist and the author of a brand new book called Unplugged, which I have right here. And um, he draws on years of medical experience and research to look at something most of us don't really think twice about. And it's about the wireless technology that we use every single day and what it actually might be doing to our health. Okay, we've got a lot to get into. So we'll be taking some of your questions live in the comments. So keep them coming throughout. And Dr. Brown, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Olivia. Very nice.
Okay. Jumping right in. Why did you write this book?
Well, that's a good question. If you'd asked me 14, 15 years ago if I would write a book about EMFs, I would have thought I would not have known what you were even talking about, because as a radiologist, I learned, just like most physicists out there, that there was ionizing radiation and non-ionizing radiation, and non-ionizing radiation was safe and harmless, and that there was no issue to using it. But since then, I've been educated. I went to an all-day seminar at a medical conference 12 years ago, in which I learned that this kind of radiation can cause oxidative stress, which is a cellular response to electromagnetic fields. And when I learned that, I became concerned, because I saw the trajectory that technology was going, in that we were starting to develop more and more devices that were communicating wirelessly. And it didn't seem that anybody was taking into account the fact that this radiation, one, penetrates into the body, it doesn't bounce off the skin, and two, that it causes cellular effects. And if it causes oxidative stress, that's a precursor to disease and a whole host of diseases. And so I really thought I needed to learn more about this, and I needed to do what I could to alert the population, alert whoever would be willing to listen. And that's why I wrote the book.
I see. And I'm guessing authors of science textbooks don't earn more than clinical radiologists. So, like, that's was everything you said just like why you put the time and effort into it, or was there like an additional reason?
Well, it's true. People, you need to understand that this is a crossover discipline. It requires an understanding of physics, an understanding of some engineering, biology, and also physiology, and just medicine in general. And most people do not have that background. They don't have if they're a doctor, they don't have the background in physics or in engineering. If they're a physicist, they don't have the background in biology. Even if they're a biophysicist, their understanding of human physiology and medicine is very limited. Engineers, of course, know nothing about biology, and limited understanding of physics. So there's really this is a unique topic in that it requires an understanding of all these four disciplines. And there are a few books out there, but they're very, very technical. And I needed to write something from the voice of a person with this background to create a dialogue that was reputable.
I see. Okay, thank you. And has researching this book changed your own personal tech habits? And if so, how?
Before I wrote the book, I had a microwave oven. I had a cell phone that I still didn't put the cell phone up to my head, because it would warm my cheek and my ear, and I had a feeling something was going on there. So I've never put the cell phone up to my head, but I had a microwave oven. I had the Wi-Fi router, and we had a Wii console in the house. After doing more research with my own EMF detector in the house, I did an experiment with my daughter. We surveyed all these different devices, including the Wii and the Wi-Fi router and the portable phone and the cell phones. And I started taking some of these emitters out of the house. We unplugged the microwave oven and put it in the garage. I did away with the portable phone in the kitchen. I started putting the Wi-Fi router on a timer so that it would turn off before we went to bed. And my children, I made sure that they turned their phones off and put them in a basket in the hallway before they went to bed. So those were some of the things that I did initially in researching this book, and since then it's just gotten even more dramatic. I mean, I don't have a Wi-Fi router anymore. I have a router, but I plug Ethernet cords into it, which are then hardwired into all the devices in my house. And yeah, so I don't use Wi-Fi, uh, and and that's most of it right now, at least in terms of the tech aspect of it.
Well, I did not know that. Maybe I need to do. I need to inform my parents.
It's a process. It really is a process. But I will tell you that with each modification, I noticed something, an improvement. So, for example, I had the portable phone in the kitchen. It was near the sink, and when I would do dishes, I always felt a little bit of an angst, that I was just waiting to be done with the dishes. I didn't know what it was from, but it was a little bit of an irritation, just and a little uncomfortableness. And it wasn't until I unplugged the portable phone that was right next to the sink that I did the dishes, and I thought, I don't feel that angst anymore. Like all of a sudden, I don't mind standing here doing dishes like I did before. And it was just this really, really subtle difference, but it spoke to me, and I've never used it since. So it's that kind of thing, very subtle but different.
Oh, I see. Okay. And okay, what is one small habit change you tell a student who's on their phone for like 6 or more hours per day?
Yes, this big problem, isn't it?
Yeah, that is very.
Regarding there's social media aspects to it, and there's the whole addiction. Regarding electromagnetic fields and exposure to that, my one suggestion would be turn the phone off at night, at least a half an hour before you go to bed, and keep the phone away from your nightstand because it still pings. Some of the phones still ping even when they're turned off or in airplane mode. So that would be my number one recommendation. Is a good sleep is super important, and if you have the cell phone on your nightstand or underneath your pillow, which a lot of people I understand do, that radiation is it's penetrating through the pillow, it's going into your head, it's going into your brain, and it's affecting your brain while you're sleeping. And so even though you might think that you're sleeping, you're not producing the same chemicals in the brain, you're not healing and restoring your health like you should be with the cell phone under your pillow, and over time you can get sick.
Do you think then should students leave the setting do not disturb on while they sleep and keep the phone away from them and just, or is that just like a habit that they'll just need to change?
I think do not disturb is not the same thing as being in airplane mode. I think if you're in do not disturb mode, you might not be getting the pings and the dings, but the phone is still emitting radiation.
See. Okay. So from what I got, sleeping with your phone near your bed, it really matters. So, but do
Yeah.
you think any of it is overstated?
No, I don't. I don't. I know it sounds very inconvenient because we've all gotten so used to having this technology. You can't hear the radiation, you can't feel it hitting your body, you can't smell it or taste it. We don't have a sense to detect it, and that's why people don't think that it's doing anything to us. And the reason is because it is not in the natural environment. This is a form of energy, at least these frequencies of energy are not in our natural environment, and that's why we do not have a sense organ to detect them. The sense organ that we have to detect electromagnetic radiation is the eye, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
seeing visible light with our eyes. Some insects can see, like butterflies, can see ultraviolet radiation, and some insects and animals can see infrared, like snakes. But there's a small bandwidth of the electromagnetic spectrum that we can see, and the reason for that is because that's what we're getting from the sun. The harmful rays are being they're being absorbed or reflected by our magnetosphere and our atmosphere. But that's why life has evolved in the presence of these cycles of electromagnetic radiation, and but microwave radiation has not been a part of that, and so there's no sense of to detect it with our bodies. Did I
Okay.
just? Yeah.
Oh, and so if someone who thinks if this was really that dangerous, wouldn't they have acted by now? What would you reply to them with?
Unfortunately, that is not the way things have worked historically in our country. And if anybody wants to take a look at history, you can look at the smoking industry and their playbook and how many years it took for the acknowledgement that cigarettes could cause cancer. It just took decades and decades. So unfortunately, the groups like the FCC, government agencies, are more in the business of keeping industries profitable and functional, and it's less about human health. So, and that's just a reality that we live with.
Yeah,
And it's really the onus of proving that this stuff is harmful is on people like you and me.
I see. Hmm. Okay. Then what age do you think kids should get their like first phone? If there is a specific age?
It's really personal. In my family, my children got their phones when they were 12, which was seemed early to me, except the argument is, of course, there's so much socialization that happens on the phone between all these apps and the texting, and you don't want your children to be, you know, ostracized or not part of the community because they don't have a phone. So there's a balance there.
Yeah.
But what I did is I set limits. So no cell phones at the table. While we were having dinner, we had to all talk to each other. No phones in the bedroom at night when they were going to sleep. No phones in school. No, no phones in the car. So if we were wherever there were limitations so that the use of the cell phone was possible during finite periods of time during the day, and that avoided the addictive behavior tendencies that can develop from this technology, and it also gave their bodies a break from the radiation.
I see. So that's more the reason why more parents should know about this.
Yes.
And you work with radiation as part of your job. How is cell phone radiation like? How does it differ from that?
Well, that's a good question. In radiology, we have different types of radiation that we use to get images from people. We have ionizing radiation, which is what we use for X-rays and CAT scans. Gamma radiation is an even higher frequency that we use for PET scans and bone scans and cardiac scans. And then, but we also have technology, magnetic resonance imaging or MRI machines.
Mhm.
They use non-ionizing radiation. So we put the patient in a strong magnetic field, and then we bombard it with radio frequency radiation, the same type of radiation that we're using with wireless communication. That radiation goes into the body and that flips protons off axis, and depending on how the protons react, that's how we get an image. The difference is that in an MRI, the patient is in the magnet for maybe 45 minutes, a half an hour, 45 minutes. It's a finite period of time, and then they leave, they go home, and maybe they feel a little bit funny in the head after an exam. Some people report that, but then it's over. They don't have another exam for perhaps months or years or never. And compare that to wireless radiation, say from a cell phone. You're describing a child who might have a cell phone in their hands and in use for 6 or 8 hours a day. That's a lot of radiation. I mean, we're talking about, a difference between a half an hour of exposure to 6 to 8 hours a day, perhaps even more if there's a Wi-Fi router nearby. And then you're talking about day after day after day after day. So
Yeah,
it's a constant exposure. and it's the chronicity, it's the duration of exposure that doesn't give the body a break to heal. That's what the real problem is, I believe.
See, that's actually really interesting. I actually was, I had to take an MRI recently. I think it was like last week, and it crossed my mind. I was just wondering, because it felt really short. I know a lot of people, because also my mom also had to get one. She has claustrophobia, so she was really nervous in there as like on top of everything. But I was like, the I think I was in there for 45 minutes, and so that gave me a lot of time to think.
Yeah,
And
we try to make the protocols as short as possible, but it's a really interesting and powerful technology, and you get to really differentiate between different tissues, which you can't do by just looking at density differences in a CAT scan, for example. So it's a really powerful machine, but it can be daunting for somebody with claustrophobia or who doesn't like to hear the loud noises.
yeah.
But in terms of radiation exposure, it's brief. So, yeah.
Um, what does it mean to find a biomarker for something, and why would it be such a big deal to find one for EMR syndrome?
If you think about it, we have a lot of diseases that that we've categorized and labeled in our in medical textbooks and all kinds of diagnostic uh, diagnostic codes for billing and all kinds of applications, and they're all based on making a diagnosis. So, how do you diagnose if somebody has rheumatoid arthritis? How do you diagnose if somebody has an ulcer? You have to have some type of objective data, some type of objective finding to look that you can reproducibly say, okay, this person's got, for example, if they've got a hole in the lining of their stomach that you can see with an endoscope or a barium study, you can say this person has an ulcer. You can make the diagnosis because there's an objective finding. With EMR syndrome, the findings are often self-reported, and if people don't know what that is, it's a constellation of symptoms that people can experience when in the presence of electromagnetic fields. And up to 5% of the population is affected. And because the symptoms are often subjective, like I have a headache or I have ringing in my ears, there's no way for somebody to document that with an objective test. There's no test to do that you can say, oh, you have ringing in your ears. Do you understand? It's
Yeah.
self-reported. There's no test to look at and say, oh, you have a headache. I can see it on this exam. So the importance of what a biomarker is it's a test that we can do that we can use to identify somebody who is going through a certain disease process or disorder. With the case of EMR syndrome, we're hopeful that we'll come up with one soon. There have been reports of people who are undergoing oxidative stress from EMF exposure. Those metabolites of oxidative stress can be picked up in various body secretions. And so that's one test that's been shown to have some promise, except that oxidative stress is not specific. So there's a lot of different toxins in the environment and other conditions that can cause oxidative stress and an increase in those metabolites. But I did that study with Rouleau, where I showed that the cell phone can cause blood to aggregate and form clumps in the vein in the knee. It was a study that I published a couple of years ago. That was interesting, and we've done many more subjects since then. And there's a potential that might be a biomarker in terms of people who have who have EMR syndrome might be predisposed to develop Rouleau more commonly than people who don't. It's still kind of preliminary, and I can't really come down with a hammer and say this is so. We're still evaluating the data, and I haven't published the paper yet, but we're hopeful that there will be it might be what might turn into be a biomarker potentially.
I see. What would an ideal biomarker for EMF related symptoms look like?
An ideal biomarker would be something that was reproducible, so you could identify it in every person who complained of the condition, who had symptoms of the condition, and it would be less. It would be rare in the population that was not exposed.
Mm.
So
How close do you think researchers are to identifying like a good biomarker that's specific enough for EMF exposure to be clinically useful?
I don't know, and you know, this comes into the question of reproducibility in general, and with radiation is different from some other types of toxicants or toxins in the environment. Radiation can cause two types of effects. One is predictable, such as a burn, and the other is more random. It seems random. It's called the stochastic effect. And so when you're exposed to radiation, even ionizing radiation, if you're exposed to ionizing radiation, some people will get cancer, some people won't. The more that you increase your exposure to ionizing radiation, the greater the likelihood that you're going to get cancer.
Mm.
Know that from the atomic bombs and all that, and all the studies that have been done over the years. With non-ionizing radiation, there's a similar stochastic effect. It seems random. So some people get EMR syndrome, some people don't. Some people might be getting cancer from too much EMF exposure. Some people might be getting neurodegenerative diseases. Some people aren't. And it's all because the biology is so complex, and the body's alive. And so if you're creating oxidative stress in a cell, the cell's response is going to vary, and the reaction to the oxidative stress is going to vary. It's not going to be the same all the time in every person. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Um, but a lot of people on the internet say that non-ionizing radiation is like the safe kind. Do you agree with that?
Well, it's all relative. So at some point midway into the ultraviolet spectrum, energy has the waves of electromagnetic radiation have enough energy to potentially knock an electron out of an atom's orbit. That's the delineation between ionizing and non-ionizing radiation. If you can knock an electron out of an atom's orbit, that atom becomes unstable and it looks for an electron somewhere else. And when it picks an electron from another atom, that atom can become unstable. And that's why radiation is so dangerous, because it creates unstable atoms. Non-ionizing radiation is not unstable like that, because the energy in the non-ionized radiation isn't great enough to knock an electron out of an atom's orbit. However, in a biological system, we have different we have cell membranes that have a charge on them, and these electromagnetic fields can alter the charge on the cell membranes. And when that happens, the cell membranes have these channels in them, these ion channels, which can open up. And so there's a physiological effect that has nothing to do with ionization, but it's causing physiological changes. Just like a cell in a plant can take light and turn it into sugar. Light is not ionizing radiation, but it's caused through the process of photosynthesis.
Yeah.
Plant can actually take non-ionizing radiation and use that energy to create sugar. And our skin can metabolize vitamin D, can make vitamin D or synthesize vitamin D from exposure to non-ionizing radiation. So, and our eyes can see from not, all these things are happening with non-ionizing radiation. So our bodies do react to it. And when these proteins in the cell open up, calcium can flood into the cell, and that can cause the cell to become unstable and produce something called reactive oxygen species. And I know this is getting kind of technical, But reactive oxygen species can then lead to oxidative stress and the formation of free radicals, which has the same sort of effect as the ionization from ionizing radiation. So it's like life finds a way, right? The energy is creating free radicals and ionized particles through non-ionizing radiation through this cascade of events. And so even though it's quote safer because it's not causing direct ionization, it can cause ionization in a roundabout sort of way.
I see. I feel like a lot of people hear that the cell phone radiation is not ionizing. How would you explain that, like really simply, to someone without any science background?
What I tell people is the radiation is penetrating into your body and it's causing effects on your cells. It is not, energy is not, it does not just dissolve away and cause heat. It causes effects on each cell that it hits. So I don't, yeah, it's true. It's tricky to find the terminology that somebody without a science background is going to be able to understand. And I tried to do that in my book, but
I see.
it is tricky. You know, it's really difficult.
Well, I feel like many people don't want to hear about the dangers of cell phones or wireless earbuds or cell towers because they don't want to stop using the technology. So they'd rather not think too deeply about it. What would you say to those people?
I would say you don't have to stop using the technology. You just can change your behavior a little bit to lessen your exposure. Just like in radiology, we expose people to ionizing radiation, which we know can cause cancer, right? But the acronym that we use is called ALARA, or as low as reasonably achievable. And we figure that we're getting a benefit from the test at this tiny risk to the patient. We're going to get information that could be useful for them. The same thing with this cell phone technology. If you limit your exposure to as much as possible, you can use the technology and perhaps not suffer any health consequences from it. It's the incessant exposure. It's the sleeping with the phone at night. It's the having the Wi-Fi router in your bedroom while you're sleeping. It's carrying the cell phone in your pocket when you can be carrying it off your body. Using speaker mode instead of putting the cell phone up to your ear. There's simple modifications that people can do to lessen their exposure without giving up on the technology. Giving up on the technology it's not even possible anymore.
Yeah.
You go to a restaurant now and they want you to use the QR code to get the menu, or you go to I mean,
Mhm. It's
just
everywhere.
it's everywhere. There's two-factor authentication, and every time you try to log on to something, so it's not possible to eliminate your exposure, but you can reduce it.
Okay. Is there a common myth about EMF radiation that you wish would just not be a myth at all?
Well, I think the concept that that there's no smoking gun, that there's no paper that is truly proven that there are health effects to non-ionizing radiation except for heating. So that's the myth that I wish would go away because the science is clear. And if you talk to any scientist or researcher who has studied this field, they're in agreement that there are non-thermal health effects to non-ionizing radiation.
I see. Okay. That is all the questions we have, and now we're just gonna move on to the questions that's sent in by the readers. Okay. If someone has EMR syndrome with severe reactions, including seizures, headaches, aches and pains, heart palpitations, what would you say is the most important thing to do when building a house? Do you have like any specific recommendations for like how to protect oneself against blood clumping?
Well, those were a couple of different questions there. Regarding building a house, I'm not an engineer. Obviously, I'm not an electrician, but I can talk from experience in that I'm building a house now, and the most important thing is to site your house in a location where you're going to have low ambient EMFs. So try to avoid being near high tension power lines, or actually any power lines if possible. Cell tower masts, and if there are some of these in your community or nearby, perhaps have a building biologist or invest in some detectors to find out what levels you're being exposed to on the property before you build. Because if you find that the levels are too high, then I wouldn't build a house there. And of course, with the continued installation of these towers, which seem to be popping up all over the place, there's no guarantee that where you site your house is going to become, there's no guarantee that it won't become within eye's view of a tower going up in the future, unfortunately, until we put until we control the installation. Once the house is built, or during the building process, they do have conduits and sheaths that can go over wiring to block RF. So if the electrician twists the wires together before installing them, that should eliminate magnetic fields. But in terms of the emanation of RF, particularly from dirty electricity, they do make conduits that will reflect that and or block it. And I would recommend installing that with the wiring. It is much more expensive, and there are different vendors and products that people can research and look into, but I think that's a worthy expense.
I see. Okay. And another person asks, are non-NATO countries the ones with the fewest EMF issues? And are they good countries to move to escape the onslaught of EMFs, aerosol injections, etc.?
There are NATO countries that have lower EMF exposure limits, and there are non-NATO countries that have high exposure limits. So I don't think there's really a correlation, but most of the NATO countries do use ICNIRP guidelines, which is kind of an agency similar to the FCC, and that they've been infiltrated by industry, and so their exposure limits are high, and so yeah, if you're, I don't think it's it has to do necessarily with NATO, but it's there are countries in NATO that have lower limits, and countries, yeah, like I said, that are outside of NATO that have high limits. So it's not really doesn't really correlate.
I see. Is there any adverse effects from red light therapy, including near infrared light?
Red light therapy has become very popular, and the idea is that it stimulates collagen growth. It stimulates mitochondrial activity. There's I don't really understand it, just from my own sense of the world, in terms of, if you want to be exposed to red light, just go out and for a walk in the morning or in the evening before the sun sets, and you're going to be exposed to red light with less blue light, and I think that'll probably have the same beneficial effects. But people, in terms of having exposure to a synthetic form of red light with LEDs, I don't think it's going to do damage. In fact, from what I understand, there's no health consequences. However, treatment should be during the day when the sun is up in the sky, because even red light can affect melatonin production. So if you have a treatment done at night, you're going to be delaying your melatonin secretion and production. But from what I understand, the treatments are given just a few times in a span of a few months. So it's not something that's done too often.
I see. Okay. Are you still studying Rolu formation or other tests for electrosensitivity in patients? And if so, how can I join the waitlist for testing?
Well, thank you for your interest in our research. I do believe we are going to do more testing on Rouleau subjects. We just completed our third round of experiments in a few months ago, when we're still going through the data, trying to sort through it and understand what we're looking at. I do anticipate we're going to do another study at some point in the next year. And if anyone's interested in participating, they could send an email to info@ehtrust.org with your name and contact info, and we can compile a list. I'm not sure what state it would be done in, and if you're willing to travel, then that would be probably a requirement, because obviously we're going to be getting people from all over. But yeah, I do anticipate we're going to do more research.
I see. Um, do you agree that children in a school classroom whose primary lighting source is either fluorescent light or LED light experience harm to their physical and mental health?
It has been shown that fluorescent lights can cause anxiety and irritation, eye strain, and LED lights were supposed to improve upon that, but they can have their own problems. For a child who's in class during the day, my recommendation would be to open the blinds and let natural light come in as much as possible. So if there are LED lights in the classroom, then you're going to have a mixture of these LED lights and ambient sunlight, and that would probably ameliorate any of the problems with the LED lights. The problems with LED lights is that, especially now, they're creating lights that have a smaller and smaller bandwidth of frequency. So instead of being exposed to a full spectrum light, which uses all of the, you're getting all the information out there. If you're being exposed to a narrower band of light from the LEDs, you're not getting all of the information. You're not using all of the capability of your retina, and over time, the argument is that could affect your ability to see color potentially, or to discriminate. There could be negative health impacts from that. The second thing is that if you're in a class at night, if you're a night school and you're in a classroom with LED lights that have more of the blue frequencies in them, that's going to suppress your melatonin production
Mm,
as opposed to a softer light.
see. Do you think, or could oxidative stress explain symptoms like headaches or heart palpitations, or is that connection still hypothetical?
I think there are many different reasons why somebody could have a headache, and I think there's many different mechanisms that can cause the symptom of a headache. I
Mm,
don't think you could correlate it to necessarily oxidative stress. And what was the other one?
heart palpitations.
Same thing. I mean, heart palpitations, uh, arrhythmias, dysrhythmias in the heart. I mean, the conduction of the heart is a whole subspecialty of medicine, and it's very complicated, and it's not necessarily related to oxidative stress. So I would say if somebody's experiencing heart palpitations, probably best to get it evaluated by a cardiologist, or at least your GP. Have somebody do an EKG, make sure you don't have extra beats, that there's not something else going on.
Okay. Is it possible to hook up a laptop or desktop to the Ethernet for a cable TV system?
I'm sorry, Olivia, can you repeat that?
Is it possible to hook up a laptop or desktop to the internet for the for cable TV system? Do you know?
Yes, you can hook up a laptop, or a desktop, a TV, a smart TV. You can hook all those things up with Ethernet cords to your modem. In fact, I don't know if you can see this. I've got this adapter right here, which on one end you've got the Ethernet cord, and on the other is it's the UVC plug that goes right into the laptop, and I can plug in the laptop into the Ethernet cord and get access to the internet without any radiation at all.
Okay, we got a question on how is the research project going?
It's going. I was hoping our study published or to present it to a radiology meeting in the fall, but it was not accepted. So now we're going to write it up and submit it to a journal. That's I've been involved with so many things lately. I just haven't had the time to do that, but it's on my list of things to do.
Could you explain a little bit more about what rouleau formation is? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but
Yeah, very good. So one of the effects I mentioned earlier, when this non-ionizing radiation goes into the body, it can cause the depolarization of blood cell. Let me rephrase that. It can cause the depolarization of cell membranes, not just blood cells, but any cell membrane. And I mentioned that in some cells, it can open up these protein channels and let ions and calcium flow into the cell. With red blood cells normally have a charge on their membrane so that they repel one another. Ideally, you want to have blood floating in plasma, which is a proteinaceous fluid, and each of the red cells are separated by each other because of this repulsive force. And that way, the red blood cells have their entire surface area can be used for gas exchange. You know, the red blood cells, they pick up oxygen in the lungs, they deliver it to the tissues where they release the oxygen in exchange for carbon dioxide. And all that requires surface area. So the more surface area, the more gas exchange that can occur. What happens with the administration of an electromagnetic field is those cell membranes lose their polarization, and then the cells can become sticky to one another. And you end up with cell upon cell upon cell upon cell. You can have hundreds of cells stuck to one another, and then they're not, it's not a blood clot, but they're stuck to each other. And so the surface area is no longer available for gas exchange. It can also cause an increase in blood pressure. It can cause other health effects related to hypertension. It can potentially lead to an increased risk of developing a blood clot. So the important point about rouleau is it's reversible. So over time, the red blood cells regain their polarity and they go back to normal. And it's not a blood clot, but there are potential health consequences from it. And you can imagine that if you put, let's say, a cell phone in your pocket and your blood is going through the vicinity down into your leg, and over 5, 10, 15 minutes, all the blood in your body is circulating underneath that point at some point, you know, because your blood's constantly circulating and it's constantly being exposed to the phone. So the longer that you have the phone in your pocket, or the more times that you're exposing your blood over the course of a day, you're going to continually going into a low potentially over and over again. Now, some people it doesn't seem to happen to, and some people it happens and it can dissipate if they ground, for example. We've shown that so when people connect to the earth by grounding, the rouleau can dissipate.
so is your research showing like a connection between cell phones and rouleau formation?
Right. So the paper that I wrote, we put a cell phone in the back of someone's knee for 5 minutes, and we showed with an ultrasound machine that the blood went from normal to rouleau in 5 minutes with the cell phone against the knee.
I see. Okay. And that's just what your research is pursuing, right?
Yeah, there's a lot to learn about that, because if that is a biomarker, well, then we need to know what prevents it, what exacerbates it, how far away, you know, what is it about the radiation that's causing it? Is it because it's a modulated frequency? Would it happen with a simple wave? There's so many variables that you can then study. It might seem like it's not, like it's just, oh, it's just the blood, but but there's a lot to it once you start kind of dissecting into that category of disease.
And with like the person with the knee experiment, was that only just one person or was there multiple?
The one that we published was one person, but we've done 56 people since. So yeah, it's not just her. It's not everyone, but it's not just her. It wasn't just that one subject.
Okay. Okay, this question is pretty long. Someone heard this possible explanation for EHS, that the the font I'm not pronouncing this right.
How do you
It
spell,
it's
how do you spell it?
Tanel, I think.
Or Fontanelle?
Yeah. And the head of a baby should be closed before the age of like approximately 7. However, when a child undergoes a traumatic experience, it doesn't close. So a person who is electrosensitive has an open, how do you pronounce it again?
Fontanelle?
Fontanelle, and is therefore electrosensitive. Um, they say that it can be closed when the person undergoes a treatment whereby the traumatic experience is experienced again during a relaxation session by a therapist. And that one time treatment closes it and it's no longer hypersensitive. What do you think of that?
Well, in terms of an anatomical explanation, I would say I've never seen anything that would support that. I mean, I've read tens of thousands of CAT scans in my career, and I've never seen an open fontanelle in an adult. So I don't, and I'm sure that I've read CAT scans in people who have EMR syndrome. So I don't think that's a plausible explanation, at least not anatomically. If they're talking about some type of energetic process, well, I don't know. I can't evaluate that, but I would say based on anatomy and what I've observed clinically, that's not the case. And plus, I mean, what I would say would be much more common would be, say, to see somebody who has a burr hole in their skull from the drainage of a hematoma, or people who have had parts of their skull removed to remove tumors, and they place the skull back, the part that they took off, they put it back, and they put staples around it, or these brackets to keep the part of the skull in place, but there's always a halo around the defect that would remain open. So I'd say that's much more common, and that is a phenomenon. But I don't think that there's any association with EMR syndrome with that either.
Okay. This is a question about data centers and the EMFs that they generate. Has EHT done any work to address potential leakage from data centers?
We've I've been in discussion with a group that was looking into the health effects of data centers. It's preliminary. From what I understand, they do not emit strong RF, or radio frequency radiation. They do produce a lot of dirty electricity, so people in the community might have contamination in their electrical lines. Of course, there's a lot of industries that create dirty electricity, and the smart meters that have been placed on many of our homes also creates dirty electricity. So it's not unique to these data centers. From what I understand, the biggest insult to health and well-being has to do with noise pollution, and then of course there's the contamination, or the overutilization of water. So I'm not quite sure that there's too much of an impact from EMF.
Let's see. And another question from Facebook is there a strategy for creating white zones, like wireless free, and what intensity of RF is always unsafe no matter how long the duration?
That's an interesting question. I don't think that we know. Um, if there, I would say that there's no intent. Let me, how do I phrase this? If you increase the intensity of RF, you're going to have deeper penetration. It's going to go deeper into the body. And when I do a presentation, sometimes I'll show a picture of a finger with a light underneath it. And if you have uh, an intense illumination, the light can penetrate through the skin of the finger, and you can see the light come through the finger. So the same thing happens with intense EMF, or radio frequency radiation. It goes through the body, just like when you're in an MRI machine. So you're getting more of your tissue exposed, but then at a certain point, it's going to go through your body. So I don't believe, and I believe that it's the same. It's still non-ionizing, regardless of how intense the radiation is, but it can cause tissue heating at a certain point, and that's what our regulations, our standards are trying to protect against the
Mhm.
heating effect.
Yeah.
So I would say, at what point would it be known to cause damage? Would be when it starts causing heating. Otherwise, a transient exposure, which is then eliminated, should be recoverable. And in
Okay.
terms of I'm sorry, and in terms of white zones, good question. I don't know. I mean, I know that there's one in West Virginia. There's a telescope there that they're keeping the skies clean around so that they can observe radio frequency coming in from space. But it just seems very difficult to get clean zones anywhere else. But something to aspire to.
Yeah, I see. Is there a difference between radioactivity and radiation from EMF?
Yes, there's a big difference. So radioactivity is the emission of particles and or electrons from an unstable element. So, for example, uranium, plutonium, radium, these are all unstable elements that don't have the right number of electrons and protons and neutrons. Like they're out of balance, and so they're emitting out particles, and those particles can cause damage to nearby structures, especially biological structures. That's radioactivity. And if you saw the movie Chernobyl or any of the documents,
Mhm.
you know there was a scene where he picks up this radioactive brick, and then his hand is all burnt, and it gets and the tissues because it keeps progressing, because as the tissues become damaged from radioactivity, they then damage additional tissues because they become unstable. And so radiation is extremely dangerous. Uh, and yeah, and so compare that to non-ionizing radiation, which doesn't cause ionization, but it is becoming absorbed and it's having a biological effect regardless. So two completely different things.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. And another question from Facebook is about Starlink satellites and how they affect the general population.
I don't know. That's a good question too. They're emitting very low levels of RF. By the time, we're now taking this emission, we're putting it up into the sky, and so the antennas, the transmitters are so far away as compared to being on the street corner down the street from you or on the building next door to you. And radiation, as you double the distance, you decrease your exposure by three-quarters. So you can imagine that if you've got a transmitter up in the sky, that by the time that radiation hits the ground, it's much, much less intense than if it were nearby. With that being said, it can still have biological effects. So we don't, there's no like, and one of the things I like to stress to people is, your cells, the cell in your eye can detect one photon of light. And so your brain, you just need one photon, and all of a sudden you can have a physical reaction in your body. And so, regardless of whether or not these frequencies are super low or not, they can still be affecting wildlife. They can still be affecting trees and plants and insects. They could still be affecting us potentially. And it's changing the electromagnetic signature of the Earth, which is frightening, in my opinion, because again, uh, aside from being enveloped in a magnetic field, the Earth's magnetic field, we're not supposed to be experiencing radiation during the night. The sun's
Mm,
supposed to be on the other side of the Earth. We're supposed to be able to relax and not be exposed to radiation.
yeah. Do you think that possibly impacts people's fertility then?
Yes. So there have been studies have shown that there's definitely an impact on sperm production, and that's why men should never put a cell phone in their pocket. It affects the sperm quality, sperm motility, and the amount of sperm, viable sperm. So yes, the radiation is definitely affecting male fertility. Female fertility, I'm not quite as well versed in the literature. From what I understand, it's possible, and it depends on the source. Again, the ovaries are much deeper in the body than the testes are. The testicles are very superficial, and so you don't need to have a very deep penetration of radiation to reach the testicles, whereas the ovaries can be perhaps several centimeters deep. So, and in every woman, they're in a different location. So it might be 3 centimeters deep in one woman and 2 centimeters in another. And so if somebody's using a laptop and somebody's using a phone, it's too many variables to really come down hard on the science, much harder than for the male testes.
Yeah. What would you say are the best countries to live in to avoid unsafe levels of RF?
Hmm.
If there is any.
There's some country, I think Bulgaria has like 110, maybe I think it's 0.01 watts per meter squared is their safety is their limit. But do you want to live in another country? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how to answer that kind of question. It's really I mean, where you live is you can create a safe enough place in your home in this country, or or in Canada or Mexico or someplace close by, as opposed to trying to find someplace on the earth to escape to. I know that when I was in Africa, in East Africa, the last time I was, there was no EMF at all, and I brought my detector there, and I turned it on, and I was in the eastern part of Tanzania, and there was no Wi-Fi anywhere. And the people there that had phones, they had to travel a few miles down the road to get to a spot near the airport, this strip where they could get some cell signal. But otherwise, there was nothing. But who knows what it's like today? I mean, this is a moving target, and yeah, with the satellites and the advancement of different countries promoting this technology, what's safe today might not be safe tomorrow. So I just think it's, yeah. And furthermore, just to reiterate, most of the exposure that we're getting is from our cell phones and our Wi-Fi routers and things indoors. So if you change that, you're doing a lot.
Well, this has been very eye-opening. And going one more time back to your book, which I also see you have back there. If everything Dr. Brown has shared with you, let you thought differently about all the technology in your life, I'd really encourage you to check it out. It's his book, Unplug. A radiologist explores the damage caused by electric pollution and how you can prevent it. It goes so much deeper into the science, his own research, and practical steps for protecting yourself and your family. And if you do read it, please head over to Amazon and leave a review. And it genuinely helps more people find the book, and it will help get the message out further. Thank you so much all for tuning in and for your amazing questions today. And thank you, Dr. Brown, for being here.
Thank you, Olivia. Appreciate it. It was great.
Do you have anything else you'd like to include or say?
I always like to tell people that, we live in a beautiful place. The Earth is a beautiful planet. There's just so much outside, and just put down the technology, go out for a walk, observe your environment, and just be at peace with the world. I feel so sad that people are so engaged with their machines that they're just missing out on the beauty of our world. So that's my final message.
Okay, thank you so much.